Hi, my name is Owen, and I am face blind. It's an often overlooked mental illness. Kind of ironic. It's that people don't really recognize it. I kind of wanted to make a video about it. I know it's not really my usual content. It's not Dungeons and Dragons or some stupid theory video where I pretend to be a shade or something weird like that. It's just something I legitimately want to discuss. So, here's what it's like. So, people often assume that faces are the only way to recognize people, or are extremely confused when I tell them I'm face blind, since to other people, faces look so different. But for me, I was always surprised whenever I heard that for other people, the face was what they used to tell people apart. For me, trying to use a face to tell people apart is like trying to use an arm to tell people apart. I mean, yeah, there's some minor differences, but overall, an arm looks like an arm. What I mainly use to tell people apart from each other is their hair and their voice. Hair is something that has proved very useful to me, but sometimes when people change their hairstyle or something, I don't recognize them, and they recognize me, which is something that happens a lot, and it's something I've never really learned how to deal with in spite of the amount of times it's happened. And people's voice. For me, voices often are the easiest way to tell people apart. I am very sensitive to audio, so I guess that makes sense. But the problem with that is sometimes I have to be like, okay, hello, person, I know who you are. At least I will when you talk because of your voice. But it can be pretty tricky, honestly. So, one thing that's always really bugged me is after I get a haircut or something, or even in, there's something really surreal about looking into a mirror. Being face blind, and I can't always recognize other people, which in of itself can be pretty problematic sometimes, but one thing that isn't just problematic or gets in the way is looking into a mirror and not recognizing your own reflection. It's something I have never heard anyone else talk about. I've even started just buying a bunch of identical clothing like a cartoon character, so I don't have to worry about that very much. And I also almost never get a haircut or something because of that. Just, it's like often, I mean, there's a line from a certain thing that I may or may not have done several theories on. The line is, quote, "Look at your reflection, you don't recognize it. Can you really say that's me?" From Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Arceus's Wish. Yes, that line that feels very concerningly relatable to me is from a Pokemon fan animation. Yeah, no, I'm weird. But the thing is when you're face blind, you like have to find other ways to recognize people. And sometimes if there are people who are not as easy to recognize with these in that way. Like, and it's pretty tough for those people. But when I know someone pretty well, I usually can recognize them even though I'm face blind. It's pretty tough, honestly, sometimes, but at the same time, it's not like a debilitating thing that's impossible to deal with, like some people automatically assume it is when I tell them about it. It's really just an inconvenience, honestly. But at the same time, it can be very scary sometimes. Being in a room full of people well, you should recognize, but having trouble telling most of them apart except for the ones you know the most. Or even being, or just getting a haircut or something and then looking into the mirror and not recognizing the person you see in it. And worst thing of all that can happen when you're face blind is not recognizing people you know very well. If like whenever my brother gets a haircut, I don't recognize him for a while, and it's scary. It's like really just really tough. And I mean, I really feel like people just don't really acknowledge face blindness or even think I'm exaggerating when I say that I don't use faces to tell people apart. One method I use very often is sometimes people can have like a defining trait that helps me recognize them. I mean, it can even be something like posture or something like that. And that may sound weird, but I have some friends which hold themselves in a very weird way. And or sometimes people have a well, like sometimes people always wear the same earrings or something like that, or it's just very strange and stuff. One thing that really annoyed me is when I took a face blindness test online, they didn't show people with like the same skin tone and similar hair. They just showed a bunch of like random people who looked nothing alike, like completely different skin tone, completely different hairstyles, like people who I feel like it, it's very easy to tell apart. I and that really annoyed me. Like I I'm not if you have like a completely different skin tone than someone else, I'm not going to mistake you for them. And if you are like a head taller than me, I'm not gonna mistake you for someone shorter than me. Although, admittedly, not many people are that much taller than me. Like, there's a lot more to recognizing people than their face. It's just most people find recognizing people by their face to be very easy. I mean, but this also can have a bunch of, like, it's just really weird, but I do get to make some funny jokes about it on occasion. Like how if you covered your face during a bank robbery, I'd still be able to recognize you. Or something, as long as you didn't cover your hair. Or even if you decided to. But the thing is if you got a haircut and then did a bank robbery, I wouldn't be able to recognize you. I'm sorry, it's just the suspect had a haircut. I'm not sure who they were. Or, like, well, I have to. I'm gonna end the video here right now. This might have felt just a bit like me venting about this, but I really had to get this off my chest, and I really wanted some other people to realize the existence of face blindness, or as it's often called, prosmopathogia. It's something that's really hard to pronounce, so I just call it face blindness. I'm not honestly like the most qualified person to teach people about this. So, if you're more interested in learning about face blindness, I'd recommend doing additional research on it. Although, unfortunately, I can't recommend many resources since face blindness often goes unrecognized. I've been waiting the whole video for that punchline.